Thich Nhat Hanh said. Remember when he was asked what's the most important thing we can do for the sake of life on Earth? And I think his questioners were asking, should we work in the system or sit on a zafu or meditate or climb the barricades? He didn't go strategic at all. He said what we most need to do is to hear within ourselves the sounds of the earth crying. To hear within ourselves the sounds of the earth crying. Every spiritual tradition, somewhere in it, has a comment or a story or a metaphor about mistaken identity. And this incredible crisis for conscious life on planet Earth can be understood as that we've been thinking that we were consumers. We've been thinking that we were laborers in the machines of the industrial growth society. We were thinking that we had to get ahead as separate selves, compete, win, look out for number one, all the time imprisoned in this shrunken sense of self. And now this crisis is telling us, sort of slapping us in the face, saying, wake up. You are life on Earth. We are living members of a living planet. We're like cells in a living body. That body is being traumatized. So of course we feel it. Of course. It arises from our profound caring, and that caring is grounded in our interconnectedness with all life, our interexistence with all life. And that's been true for life since the beginning of space-time. We forgot it for a while. We began to exploit each other and the earth for separate advantage, and greed and fear grew. But so what the mainstream society would have us think of as, some personal neurotic response, and have us reduce our grief to a kind of private neurosis, is actually when we behold it and walk through it, it becomes a doorway into a vaster realization of life and of our identity, our interexistence with all life. So that's why I think that the crisis itself is both the mirrors of the mistake we've made, but it also becomes an opportunity for our awakening. And that's why I've come to think that maybe the first step on their way to the awakening is the simple act of being glad you're alive. What a magic that is. Just to stop for a minute. That in itself is a politically subversive act, because we're taught so much dissatisfaction. And that results in self-deprecation, self-loathing in a way, and the loneliness. But to pause, as in every spiritual tradition, and at the beginning of every spiritual tradition, there was this, oh, wow, get a load of this, hallelujah. I didn't create this, but here I am. I have hands, I have breath, I have eyes that can see. There are trees out there. Here's another person talking to me. Wow. There's the sun and the moon. So simple. So that act of saying, thanks to life. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be in circumstances you approve of to feel that way, you know. then finding the readiness and the will and the tenderness to look at the suffering. And I like that about the Buddha's teachings. He just began right off with that. Didn't mince words. Suffering is. And you're not going to make things better by running from it or pretending it's other. Just be with it. And then you see. When you feel grounded in gratitude, just even a little bit, so that the panic just subsides, you open the eyes, then you can feel held enough by life to notice and be present with what is also there and what you've been carrying around, maybe for as long as you can remember. But you can't talk about it, usually. Mainstream society doesn't want to hear about our sorrow for what is happening to life on Earth. That gets reduced right away to some personal pathology. They don't want mainstream society, the consumer society. They say, go out and shop, go shopping. Really, we want to go cry. And that in all the spiritual traditions, there's been place for mourning. Tears that cleanse. Hearts that open and get washed together, and words that get spoken of our anguish. What a deliverance to realize that that's not a private burden, but a shared experience with our brothers and sisters. When we're suffering massive collective trauma, there's always choice. There's a choice about how we relate to suffering. Seems to me there are two ways. One is that we can let that suffering open us up to each other and bond us in greater trust and collaboration, shared strength. Or we can let it divide us into feuding and conflict and bitterness. Quiet friend who has come so far, feel how your breathing makes more space around you. Let this darkness be a bell tower, and you the bell. And as you ring, what batters you becomes your strength. Move back and forth into the changes. What's it like, this intensity of pain? If the drink is bitter, turn yourself to wine. In this uncontainable night, be the mystery at the crossroads of your senses, the meaning discovered there. And if the world has ceased to hear you, say to the silent earth, I flow. And to the rushing waters speak, I am.